So welcome everyone. Welcome to the sharing of the experience that I had on this weekend in London with Devon Bandison. And I figured the best way to learn is to teach. So my intention for this hour is to share the experience I had over the Friday until Sunday experience in London with Devon Bandison. Devon Bandison is a coach from New York. He has a background in sports, playing basketball, working with players, though working even more with the coaches of the players. And he also coaches with Steve Hardison. And as I've been to Steve Hardison's event last year, I figured, hey, it would be interesting to also be with Devon Bandison, and my coach Chris Joseph had been in his session last year as well. He highly recommended it, and I got lucky because a few of the people didn't finalize their ticket, so there became a place available, and I was able to jump in. And overall, it was a wonderful experience. I had the benefit of having been briefed before by the session that we had last year with Chris. So I had an idea of what was coming, and still it was a fun experience having all of these items coming together. So sometimes when you have a puzzle and you know that how the puzzle should look like, you can be a lot more attentive on the real situation, so I was in the room, and I could really step into what he calls the court or the field or the pit from the sports language. While many of the others, they came for the first time, they're very skeptical. They were more like sitting on the stands or higher up in the observing. I felt invited to play onto the field. So let me share. I wrote down 55 insights, which I most likely will not share in this 1 hour, though I will summarize them in a writing post eventually. Though for you, I'll pick out the ones that really resonated most with me. And my idea is to share 45 minutes. And then if there's a few questions, if you want to go deeper, we can do this as well. We were 40 people in the room, and probably 5 were from a coaching experience background. Most others were entrepreneurs, or they brought their family members. So it was a wide group, very, very different. And he created a very safe container by starting with a gratitude exercise, really allowing us to feel and feel welcomed. And he played with the language. He played with the New Yorker slang, with the British, a little bit stiff language. So he was making fun and using also some words or swear words. And he said, okay, I'm not allowed to swear before 11. So he warmed up the atmosphere, and then he wanted to say, hey, what's the equivalent swear word in English? So he kind of bonded the Americans and the British together with humor, which was, I think, a great opening. And he created a container of let's say an invitation to dance. I invite everybody really to come out and play and dance, because that's the best way to experience, to really go in. And so he said, slow down. Whenever you're here, be present, be fully present. Don't use your phone. Slow down your thinking and focus your presence into the room. Because how you do anything, you do everything. This is a quote that Steve Hardison often uses, and in coaching, it really helps. So if you detect some kind of, let's say, sarcasm, it's very, very likely that sarcasm shows up in other sides of life. And he really invited everybody to feel comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because that's the mindset that's needed to grow, to learn. If you stay in your comfort zone, you will just repeat what you know. Then there's these people, oh, I know this. They're coming from a place of knowing. There's no openness to let something new in. Their glass is basically already full. So he was inviting for what is new, what is different, what have you not seen before, because that will allow a breakthrough. And I will come to the breakthrough because that was very important in his whole overall game thinking, because that's where when you allow yourself to not know what you don't know, then there is real room for growth and for evolution. He also shared the conceptual knowledge and the experiential truth. So if you have heard something from a book or seen it or have observed it and seen it on other people doing it, that's a so-called conceptual truth, or the Greek have the wording for it, which is the Latin word conoscere or gnokos in the Greek root. He said that's one way of seeing the world, but rather from the mind. And the other one is the experiential truth, what you have really experienced on your own. You have walked the path, and he used the word yada for it. And there's multiple different languages that have yada as a source, but if you come from the Greek or the Bible, it's the truth of the person that has done it. It's a knowledge from experience rather than from concept. And he was inviting us to embrace, to experience, rather than just go into the knowing field. There was another interesting distinction he brought into is value is coming from limitation. So if there's, and he demonstrated it simply by wearing shoes by a certain artist that had put a tag on the shoe, which made the shoe rather unique and therefore limited and therefore expensive. The way he described it there is in the realm of doing and having. So what you have, if there's only one item available on the whole worldwide, it's usually very valuable. If there's two, it makes sense to destroy the one, so there's only one left. So in the world of having and doing, or somebody have a skill that few other people have, is usually very expensive. So in the world of doing and having, limitation creates value. And I'm leaping ahead. In the world of being, when you really are being abundant, it's about sharing that creates the value. I think this is an interesting distinction shift, because we are mainly trained on doing and having. So it's almost going to limit and scarcity mindset, while on the being side, the abundance creates sharing knowledge, sharing wisdom, sharing opportunities, and it tends to increase the value or the abundance. So he shared on the breakthrough, this is what I thought in coaching is interesting. If you have a client who, I know this, they're basically not open for a shift. They know it all. They have it already figured out. So the invitation here is to create a space of, a breakthrough can only happen in the space of, I didn't know that I didn't know this. So it's sometimes a blind spot, which a coach can see and help to elicit, or it's really letting the space to think, to simmer, and of silence, which can then emerge, and that inner popping up creates the breakthrough, creates the shift, creates the insight. And he said there's basically 3 C's that are required for a breakthrough to happen. It requires the curiosity, so being open-minded, not judgmental. Having the courage to do it do it afraid, what is his explanation of courage. So leaning into something that can be courageous, uncomfortable, requires also vulnerability, embracing something which I might have a bad experience in the past. So let me explore if there's another option to learn or to take this. And the third one is coming with choice, to choose actively, I want to experience a breakthrough. I'm open for it and I really want to, and then take that breakthrough and put it into action so that it's not only conceptual, but it becomes an experience. And he played with the analogy of the field. So he said, hey, where in your life are you in your game? So if you consider a game has the area where the players are on the field or on the court, very often there's also a bench where you can decide to go into the field or rest for a while. And there's the area of all the spectators, the observers, sometimes even the know it better, the critical, watching a football game with other friends. Oh, they should have seen this, or how high. So there's a lot of judgmental or shoulding on the actual players. So he was asking us to the various different areas in life, where in life are you? Are you in your financial or in your partnership? Are you playing on the field? Are you getting your hands dirty or feet? Or are you observing and criticizing and more on the judgmental side? And you can also move it towards, are you playing not to lose, or are you playing to win? So in the sense of defense and offense. And the third action is, are you playing to really have fun, playing to play, which opens the field and makes it even bigger. But he was in the first day mainly, where are you? On the stands or on the field? And if you're on the fence, what does it take to come into the field and play? And he introduced another nice distinction, is that, are you playing by the goal line? Is it something that you want to achieve? Oh, I want to have this and do that. Or are you playing by the soul line? Is it something that you want to experience? It's coming more from a being place. And he was drawing out some distinction that there's also there's the SMART goals, which are linked to the goal lines, so the measurable, achievable. And on the soul line, it's more wise goals. And he said soul line often requires a future state to come from. It's not, I want to go from here to there. So it's a place to create from, a future to create from, which will make it possible and happen. There he mentioned the word failure, or the sentence, failure to commit is the high cost of low living. So people sitting on the fence or on the stands often fail to really commit to what they want to create. And thereby the consequence is low living, leakage of energy, leakage of feelings into their being. And they often say, hey, life is happening to me, rather than the mindset of life is happening for me. So there's the ownership language and the victim language. The victims tend to run for the victim place. If there are more victims in the room, they all try to, hey, I'm the more victim than you. And then you get the whole vicious cycle of victim, actor, and savior. While the owners go for responsibility, say, hey, give me the ball, I want to play. I want to create. So he also gave an example that procrastination isn't a story, it's an excuse about something that we rather use an excuse than doing it. You mentioned also victim language. Very often is when you start to compare, you're already on the trail to victim, because there's so many coordinates that you can only lose in it. It's a quote from Byron Katie: when you compare, you'll always lose. And he mentioned also there's a mindset, a thinking mindset that indicates victim, which he called running a racket. Running a racket is, oh, I'm not good enough to do that. I can't do it. So there's an inner voice that already comments. There's like a reporter on the game that even before you start playing the ball, they say, hey, you can't do this. I'm not good enough to, I don't feel like it, which is a language that is running a racket, which has usually a consequence, a cost to it. There's a benefit to it, so there's a payoff. Oh, I want to be right. Yeah, at the expense of winning or joy or whatever. So you get something which tends to keep you safe and give you a positive marker, like, oh, I am good, I'm looking good, or am I right? Or at the cost of being in connection, being joy, being in love, being in freedom, usually at the expense of also being separated, abandoned from the other person. There's a victim language is a distancing language rather than a connecting language. He said there, warning sign, there's nobody coming to save you. Whoever believes that somebody will save me, there's nobody coming to save you. That's over when you leave when you go into adulthood, there's nobody that's going to save you. Not even the state or not even somebody else. And he gave a bridge. If you want to challenge somebody in a victim language, you might use the wording, my challenge to you is a possibility. So create where they are standing to open them and inviting them to pass the ball. So my challenge to you, are you willing to accept the challenge as a possibility to think, to create? So he was using several of these phrases, openers to build bridges, to come from the victim stage into the ownership language. Yeah, he gave this example with gnosko, knowledge that I've read, conceptual, that I can use on the stand, and the player that really knows how to play the ball. It's an experience on the court. And who do you trust more? Somebody who just has read the book, or somebody who has played on the court? And he called it yada experience. I looked at the word. There's plenty of definitions, because there's also yada, which is more like blah, blah, blah. Though the sword that he was referring to is more from the Bible, from the Greek, which means that, oh, I've experienced knowledge, and that's why I share it. And that's why I'm trustworthy. It usually increases the level of trust. And he mentioned there's a good phrase for us for the people in the coaching world is, what have you been promoting, tolerating, or allowing? So in your life, if you start telling a story, excusing yourself, it's a promotion. You promote something, circumstances, to excuse yourself from taking actions. Or you're tolerating a story, something that really is painful, rather than stepping in for change. And the other one is kind of also allowing, is also, oh, I'm enduring some pain, rather than making a creation and change it. And he gave an example on life. Yeah, we usually, when you look at a tombstone, you have the birth date and the end date, and life really happens in the dash. So what he meant by this is there's a lot of creation that is possible. While looking back, it's good to come with he also mentioned the idea of the obituary. So we wrote the obituary as if we were, he said, hey, imagine in 10 minutes from now, it's finished. What are you writing as your own last letter to someone? And then he let us write our aspirational goals, the big life, as if we have another 20 or 30 years, whatever we were to live, and write an obituary about our own death, either from a friend, family member, or ourselves, to really make that pattern shift. It was a powerful exercise, and he gave us not much. It was like 10 minutes for each, so it was really get to the point, go down and make it precise. That was the first day. In the first day, he also invited a few people to come on the hot seat and coach them in front of the group. So that was really that we could see, oh, what means running a racket? And he got an example from the group, and then he dissected it and helped the person to understand, and also us as a group to understand it. And in the second day, there was a lot about making it visible, how we're blind and we're running through the world with a blind eye. And he was really much on the point, if you want to create a bright future, to create your world, your future, it's with the integrity of now. There's only one way to change, and this is in the action of now. Whoever says, hey, tomorrow, later, is deferring it. And the way he did this, he mastered it. He called out a few people and said, okay, you have an issue here and there. So what do you want to do? And said, oh, I want to clean this up. Okay, take your phone, call your partner, and then he walked us through it and clean it up now. And when you're done, you come back into the room. So he was really forcing people that have been deferring, pushing things out, to do it in the moment, go through the uncomfortable that they have been delaying and pushing off, and then coming back and say, yeah, I completed it. And they kind of, the whole visual experience shifted their life. From that moment on, they were on the play. They were on the court. Because before they were sitting and hiding behind somewhere. After this one phone call, even if it was painful, they were, from that moment, they were on the court. And I think it was a powerful way to use the hot seat coaching, getting people more and more onto the field. And the people that came back and said, they reported on what they did, they got cheering from the whole group, which confirmed their courageous behavior. He mentioned something on time management. There's all these skills and time management. He said, time management is one root cause, is pleasing. It's people-pleasing issue. Because whatever is the issue, the person doesn't have he used the bollocks, the Italian would say palle, the eggs, to really make a decision and say no. Because if you have a weak no, you also have a weak yes. If you create strong no's, you also have strong yeses. So he came from that no is a full sentence. The no creates the now. And everything else that is not important to your bigger mission is you can count on me not doing that. He had that sentence. So somebody, hey, are you going to do coffee with me? You can count on me not having a coffee with you. It's not what I do. So it was a gentle way, graceful way of saying no. And he introduced invitation versus obligation. So if you're a request where you're almost like begging the other person to say yes, it's more likely to be an obligation, because if the other person says no, you don't feel comfortable with it. So he said, always come from an invitation, so that a graceful no is okay. The other person says no, okay, thank you. You still have the choices to, on a request, say yes, say no, or come with a counter proposal or renegotiate. And he also introduced this renegotiate, the way to renegotiate, how you can masterfully do this, and I will come to that at a later stage. He said, if you use a no, most people come with a yes, with a no, but. Yeah, so there's very often is this way, hey, yeah, I like the idea, but, and thereby almost destroying the first part. And he said, if you come with a no, use the no and. So, no, I'm not going to come to this invitation, and I'm happy to have a phone call with you, or I'm happy to see you after my return from a vacation. So that you open a bridge, have a strong no plus a bridge into the future that you create from your side, rather than just showing a stop sign to the other person. And for value, he had an interesting, people don't pay you what you think you're worth. People pay you what you think you're worth. It's and he gave the connotation, nobody can pay what you are worth. It's only what they believe. So there's a thinking and believing, which comes more from the mind and from your self-worth perspective rather than from the being. Because he said, hey, I am who I am. Nobody can pay me what I'm worth. Though we can negotiate what is both for us worth to have this interaction. Oh, you mentioned a recommendation for the coaches. As a coach, never take more responsibility for your client's goal than your client. So really leave the responsibility to achieve the result, leave that with the client, hold the container to guide and never take more responsibility. Never, in my language, never carry their luggage and let them carry their own luggage. Okay. In the practice, I thought when running a group, he frequently, ever after a module, he asks, okay, give me 3 examples now. What is the most valuable insight of this conversation? And he said, this table, this table, this table. So he constantly solicited the insights of the group and thereby held a high level of engagement. And oh, he had fun. He shared a lot of fun stories, which I will not go into because they take too much time. And it was really fun. It gave it a light atmosphere. And he had an interesting distinction on fear, acronym of fear. Many people take fear as fuck everything and run approach. And say much healthier is face everything and rise to the occasion. So there was an invitation to, okay, turn where there's, for me, my language is, hey, fear is a poor advisor, though a great waymarker, because you exactly know when you face the fear, when you go towards the fear, the energy can release. And he said in the language, there's also 3 indicators for this turning away. And he called them bench warmer words. So words that take out the energy rather than fueling the game, they kind of move you more to the side, to the bench, which is the but. Yeah, people coming with but. Very often by using but, they devalue the first part of the sentence, taking the energy and the truth of the first part of the sentence and devalue it by putting the but. So he said, instead of but, use the and, because that keeps the creative energy into the play. You cited Yoda, do or not do is not a question. Try is not possible. There is no try. So people very often use try, and I'm going to try this. So that's language that really disempowers. Either do or say, no, I don't do. Much more powerful. Similar is with the shooting. You said, hey, don't shoot on other people. Don't shoot on yourself either. Use words like will or get, so more active ownership language. And he called it precision speaking. So precision speaking was an example that if you try to explain something, no, don't try to explain. Be focused, use a sentence as if you were to pay for every word that you use. Getting people on the focus, getting them into the now, and let them think and come with a very precise question or situation, so that makes it much easier to help them. As often, this vagueness is an indicator of hypothetical. He said, there's no way to answer a hypothetical question. You can only answer. He said to his wife, may I answer a hypothetical question? She always said, no, you're not allowed to answer a hypothetical question because you steal away the time from the others. go to the specific. It was fun the way they did it. And he said there's an interesting approach on diagnosing a situation. He called it the 3 H's. The one is the hearing, the other one is the handle, and the third one is the help. So if there's a situation, somebody comes to you, then you can ask yourself, oh, how can I diagnose the situation? Do you want my listening, hearing? Do you want my help to try and manage you solve it? Or do you need some help in the sense of, can I coach you through it? So it's actually ask yourself or ask the other person, is it hearing, handling, or helping? And that gets the precision back into the communication. Because he said, if you really listen, if you're hearing with an open mind, it helps the other person inspiring a path so that they can find their own solution. And the more this is done, it creates trust. And the higher the trust, the easier you can allow the other person to be coached and find out their own way. The lower the trust, the more you need to handle and manage and give directions. And for a leader, it takes a lot more energy managing, and it basically disempowers the employee. So it's the more useful approach is the hearing and the coaching and helping coaching approach than the managing, because managing puts the responsibility back to you, and energetically that's really much easier to let the other person carry the responsibility. And this requires some self-diagnosis. He said there's a ratio. How much do you ask and how much do you tell in the communication? Are you telling the other person to do it? Or are you eliciting, asking the other person? And the more you ask, the higher the energy usually stays in the trust area. Yeah, he came with the first principle thinking. He said, okay, all your identity in being creates your thoughts. The thoughts create your feelings. The feelings create your action, your behavior, and the behavior creates the results. So if the results are not the results that you want, it's a go to source thinking, go to identity, and shift the identity that creates this chain. It's much long term is much more favorable than trying to fix end of pipe quality control on the results. And he said, under pressure, people rise to the level of practice and coaching. So it's also here as a leader, it's not only do it once, though, well, try again. Yeah, it's not as try again, give it another try. Here you use the word try in the sense of, hey, you did it, it's okay, and try again to make it and improve it, make it better. He had another interesting distinction on integrity. For him, integrity was a mountain without a top, meaning you can never reach the summit in integrity. Integrity is a mindset where you're coming from. There's not a way you can, oh, now I've checked off integrity, because every action you need to create integrity again. He came with the distinction of, some of you might know this already, Steve Chandler, on expectation versus agreements. Expectation is basically this 50-50 game, and while agreements is 100% on the one side and 100% on the other side. So he used that one, and he said if you're in the space of an expectation, there usually is some kind of a complaint. Use this complaint, convert it into a request. What do you really want? And then from the request, create an agreement where the other person can say yes, no, or counter offer, renegotiate. He mentioned a typical way to defer energy is when there's somebody is giving an acknowledgement, handing over, hey, a good feedback. This is, I'm highly inspired how you show up here. The good way to answer this is, oh, thank you. A better way to answer is, oh, thank you for noticing. And many people unconsciously, it's nothing. And they kind of, he called it junction of creation. By not accepting the gift, the acknowledgement, they just basically release and destroy the energy that was for positive creation that was in the room. So he said, whenever somebody's giving you a feedback or acknowledgement, always honor the gift, take it, receive it with thank you or thank you for noticing, so that the energy can keep building and flowing, because that helps the creation process. And he said, very often there's false humility in the room. People are humble, which is a form of arrogance. It's a form of kind of making themselves smaller, and it doesn't serve anybody, doesn't help anybody. So he called the false humility is the highest form of arrogance. Let me see what else did I have here. There was another thing on integrity. What he found out, a loophole for integrity is, I didn't do my sports this morning, or I didn't do this one. Nobody will know but me. So I said, this is a dangerous path, because that kind of opens a loophole for energy to leak. So he said, watch out for this. Oh, nobody will know but me. Because it dismantles my word, creates my world. So if I cannot trust my own word, how should I expect others to trust my word? Because that leads into commitment. And they mentioned again, the failure to commit is the high cost of low living, because the consequences of non-commitment is energy leakage. And he had another thing, don't allow your feelings to leak into your being. So make sure that your feelings are separated from your actions. It's okay to be aware, but don't allow them as an excuse. Oh, I don't feel good today, so I'm not doing what I committed to, because that will weaken you in the long run. What else did we have? No, this was an exercise. Humility is not thinking about me less. It is thinking less about me. So don't make yourself smaller. Just think less of you make it about the other person. Humility is really about making it about the other person, not about playing small, making yourself smaller. And on the third day, we were leaning into pulling the future into the presence. It's creation. You always are, you can never not create. So everything is creation. And he put it into the 3 C's, that constantly, consciously create. So it's about being aware that whatever you do, you are in a process of creation. So you better create from a positive intentionality rather than from a which kind of runs on autopilot and might get you into the ditch. So he used, hey, reported on world. The reporter is telling about, but the reporter never gets in the game. He only watches the game. And the other one is, if you're a player, you're on the court, you are creating the game. And there's a constant possibility to create. And he gave an interesting, I think, it was almost like a clue. If something doesn't run as you plan it, expected, or on your path, and you're dealing with another person, it's always good to acknowledge what the other person is reporting, the facts that they're stating. Oh, I hear that the train has been canceled, the plane has been canceled. And then the other person, yeah, the train has been canceled. And what other options are available? So it's really to move the facts and the feelings, because feelings are very often story, while the facts are everybody's reporting on a similar facts level, while the story can be very different. My story is probably totally different than another one's story, so be cautious on what you hear, so that there's a possibility to create something in the positive. And he also made the distinction, many people live from a mindset of doing, having comes first, and then comes being. Or having comes first, then the doing, which then results to being. Which is, in some way, I call it the 2x thinking. It's really, it's a hard way, it's a scarcity mindset thinking. It's never enough. So if you switch it around, come from being, come from identity, it's be, do, have. And if you slow this down further, if you really come from a meditative point, stillness, create nothing from a white field, like awareness, being, doing, having, and when you have, then you give. So then you create a cycle, which is almost like a reinforcing cycle. And he used the wonderful example of a glass, which he filled with water. And then he was giving from this water and giving so that the glass emptied itself. So at the end, there was maybe a sip left, and said, oh, if you give from a having perspective, where you have filled your glass, at some point the glass is empty and you get still thirsty. So it's fill yourself first. So the beingness, the abundant beingness, he put a plate under the glass and then poured so much that the glass flowed over, and then the plate was holding the water, and there he was spraying the people in the first row seats, and they got wet, but the glass was full. So that was his shift from not giving from a having, but giving from I am being abundant. The abundance flows through me and it overflows, and from the overflow I can serve, create more abundance. I found this a very powerful short exercise as a pattern break, because many people tend to give until they're empty and exhausted. So we did an exercise on words that are typical for being in the stands. Yeah, and he made it visible by a short play, and also seeing how you feel when you're on the court. So when you're on the stands, very often it's judgmental, stressful, hectic, rushed, victim language, while the player on the court in action usually calm, small, focused. There's a confidence aura around ownership. So he made, and this is between one and the other, is often a mindset shift and a choice. How do I want to show up in life, and how do I want to create my day? So it's a lot about coming from an identity, and he was leading towards creating powerful I am statements. So who am I? What do I bring to the world? I am a runner identity, or I am abundant, or I am patient. So coming from a powerful energetic point and speak that into the room will allow you to create from this energy. And he said there's a good practice how you can build this up is create during the day, create little wins. So the easiest win is make your bed in the morning. It's a win, because this way you have a clean bed when you come into the room. The energy is clean. And find and put into the day little wins that reaffirm that you are not stressed, but you are in a positive path of how to guide your life. He mentioned something which I also like the approach, the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is coming from an error in doing, a failure in doing. I made a mistake. And shame is I am a mistake. And very often people are mixing this one up. It's not clearly in the communication, there's a shaming language on there rather than taking apart, oh, have I done something wrong? Is there something that there's an error which I can fix? Because then you can take the ownership, oh, let me clear it up. Or is it that my being is, I'm not enough? And the not enough, it's a shameful language, is usually disempowering, and it makes it freeze, sometimes not talking, making small, I want to hide. So be cautious, especially in coaching. Is it an area of shame or guilt? And then pull it into one of the two polarities. Very often it goes into the shame, while actually it's something which is a misunderstanding. It's something you did wrong. It's not that you are wrong. And so he invited us to play with this one and clear this up. And he said, for a change, to implement the change, he invited us to put the I am statements, the declaration, and he shared his declaration shortly, and there's a video as also how he speaks his declaration into the world. And he said, well, put some things, some I am statements that you want to put into the world as aspirational, put them into your, so that in the mirror, so that you can say, oh, I am courageous, or I am playful, I am, so that your mind looks for validation that this is actually the truth. So he said, put yourself some stumble stones so that you can, a reminder here, a reminder there, which will practice this mindset, and this will create the thinking, and which will then create the results. And he gave us each one a domino, because he said, practice it. It's a 30 to 60 day game to implement new thinking patterns. And so for me, I pulled this domino, and for me, it's a reminder of start with nothingness, with emptiness, with meditation, with quietness. And for me, it's, what are the three people that I can serve today? So it's my serving. I am serving, powerfully creating for my clients. And he said, when you have an insight, be quick with an action. It doesn't have to be a big action, but do a small action so that the mind get validated and said, oh, insight, tiny action, even if it's only writing it on a post-it note or sending something on an email. So whatever insight comes, tiny action to make that shift into the future. Yeah, I think that was the keynotes. So much for the Game Changer. The next Game Changer in London is going probably next year in May. And this one was sold out already in November. So if you are interested in that one, I'm happy to share the link. If that's really something that you would like to explore further, don't wait too long. And you can also do it in the US. It was really powerful. And even for me as a coach that has been through a lot of this experience and distinctions, and with my coach, having gone through it as well, for me, it was a very, very enriching experience, as I could put all the puzzle pieces wonderfully together and also use the meta view, see how he conducts it and how he uses the energy in the room and the coaching. So it was something I could highly recommend. And can you do it a second time? Oh, there were people that had been already 3 times there. And so it's definitely an area where you can take something for yourself every time you go. So let me open it now to, if there's any questions. We have a few more minutes, and I'm happy to open it for questions. Anybody has a question?
Was it a game-changing experience?
Yes, I think yes. For me, it's a game-changing experience in the sense to be more creative, be more playful, coming more from a playing to play, which I already do. Though the way he put things together, it is an invitation to go on the court and play more, because that's where the action happens. That's where everything happens. And ask myself, where am I standing in an observation seat? I think sometimes it's good to put yourself on the bench so that there's a possibility to observe, and training, rest day is a training day. So it's not as if you have to play every day, though from the mindset is being with the players and not being with the spectators. So we can also do a short round in the sense of that's the way he did it. What is your key takeaway? What is the one nugget that really resonated strongly with you that you will take home with you? So whoever feels.
Okay, so I have three.
Well, Elsa, go ahead and share.
Thank you for this, Martin. So my three always come from an invitation to make a graceful no, easier. And when you have an insight, immediately take action, however tiny. Love that one too. And it's interesting. I did a podcast on starting with a small win in the morning to create dopamine, right, and make everything easier. But I love the idea of the chain, right, to keep it going. So that's number three.
Thank you. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I highly resonated with the example of giving from abundance. The example with the water, and I watched the recording from the game, the proposal game as well. There you showed the example as well, and here as well. But I really resonate with that. I've only ever come across a concept like this with a love relationship before. Several years ago, where they explained why so many relationships don't work, that people try to give and they deplete their love tank and eventually gets empty. And when they don't fill it up, then there's nothing left to give. But when they fill their love tank and eventually it spills over and there's so much love and abundance. And here the concept is very similar and I really like it. And yeah, we think that we have to give all the time, and we don't pay attention to our own energy, our own time. We just focus on other people so much. I really resonate with that.
Yeah. And building on that one, a wonderful practice how he did this to clear the space is that he started on the minute and he finished on the minute. So he was available afterwards, but the whole container was really precise. So there was a sharp start and a sharp edge, and also the breaks were very, very on time. So there was little leakage, if at all. Some people kind of bended it a little bit, though in principle it was a very clear container, and therefore the energy kept. And I think this is one way of nurturing your own energy, create clear containers. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think, Martin, from my side, I think it was more about what you said about not playing the victim role, right? I mean, that was also quite resonating. We are always playing that victim role. So how to avoid that and not playing that victim role is a key as well in life in general, I would say.
Yeah, taking it back, the ownership, taking the ball and going back on court, playing rather than standing on the side and blaming and complaining.
Yeah.
Good. Mark?
Yes, I like the distinction between goal line and soul line. As you said, goal line is coming from wanting, having, and the soul line is putting the focus on being first and coming or starting from the future. This is what I like a lot. And the other one is failure to commit is the high cost of low living.
Yeah. The leakage. The moment you don't honor your own word, there's energy leakaging all over. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, I quite like the warning of nobody will know but me. I think I'm quite familiar with this feeling of surely this has no consequences as long as no one knows that I'm kind of, not abiding by what I preach. And then of course, first of all, I can feel the bad energy and I think it spills over. And I think someone once told me in an exam preparation, if you do sports on a day before you have an oral exam, people will notice you kind of have this energy. It's like the opposite of that. It's like, okay, you did something that's obviously good for you, and it just is visible to everyone.
Thank you. Well, in the spirit of honoring the time, I am very grateful that you all came to the invitation, which allowed me to share this experience, thereby going to, I learn what I teach, helping it for me to get it deeper and embody it. And I invite you to play, go into the court, be courageous, be on the field, play full out. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thanks, Martin.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take good care.